Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I've got a few more Halloween themed projects to make, so let's get started. For this first project, I'm using a coaster, a tin can, a candle cup, and some wire. I started by cutting 5 pieces of wire approximately the same length. I then twisted them together, folding over each end and wrapping it with another small piece of wire. This covers all the cut ends. I then bent it into a handle shape to fit the can. Next, I drilled 2 small holes at the top of the can. This will allow me to add a piece of wire to help hold the wire handle on. I then glued the handle on and added the wire to the top of the can. I used a piece of tape to hold the bottom in place until the glue dried. I then glued the can to the coaster and then glued the candle cup inside the can. When the glue was dry, I gave everything but the handle a coat of black paint. It looked a little too plain, so I added a small clay rope detail around the top and bottom of the can. I let the clay dry and then gave it a coat of black paint as well. To finish it, I gave it a coat of copper-colored rub and buff. For the next project, I'm using 2 styrofoam eggs. I started by cutting off a small portion of the bottom on the larger egg so it would have a flat bottom. I then glued the smaller egg to the top of the larger one using a small stick to help hold the two together. Next, I cut a piece of wire and glued that on the sides. This will be for the arms. After the glue was dry, I was ready to add the clay. I rolled out a thin piece and covered everything but the arms. I used a combination of my hands, a clay tool, and some water to smooth the clay out. Next, I made a cone-shaped piece of clay and added it to the top of the head. I also glued a toothpick into the head and then added the clay over top of that. I then sculpted the face. I used a ball of clay that I cut in half to make the cheeks, again using water and a clay tool to smooth it out. To make the mouth, I used a clay tool with a ball on the end and just pressed it into the clay. The nose is just a small ball of clay. I let the clay dry for about 5 to 6 hours before I added the clay for the arms. I find it's easier to do it this way so I don't mess up the clay that's already on the body. To make the arms, I just added a log of clay around the wire. Where the fresh clay meets the dried clay, I rubbed a little bit of water onto the dried clay and then blend the new clay onto the body. I bent the arms how I wanted them to be before adding the clay. I also made sure that he could grip his accessories. I did the same process for the other arm, and then I let it dry overnight. To make the pumpkin pail, I'm using a plastic-covered styrofoam pumpkin pick. I hollowed out the inside and then gave it a coat of paint, and then when that was dry, I painted on the face and added a wire handle. For the mask, I used black cardstock and covered it with glitter. Next, I gave the entire thing a coat of white paint. To make the eyes, I like to draw them onto a piece of paper first and then cut them out. This lets me get the size and shape I want. I then use it as the pattern and draw it onto the clay. I then used a paint pen over the penciled lines. Next, I finished painting the face. I used orange tulle to make a ruffle around the neck and then added some black tulle ribbon as well. I then glued a couple of buttons to his body. I wanted to tone down the white paint a little, so I used clear wax with a small bit of antiquing wax mixed in to give him a little bit of age. I used tiny bits of clay to make triangles and then let them dry. I then painted them to look like candy corn and glued them into the pumpkin basket. For the mask, I glued on a small wooden stick that I painted. To finish it, I glued the accessories to his hands. For this project, I'm using a floral box. I started by giving it a coat of paint. I then printed out a label and decoupaged it to the front of the box. When it was dry, I distressed some of the edges. I then applied antiquing wax to the entire thing. To finish it, I added brass corners and a small handle to the side. For this project, I'm using a thrifted book. I started by gluing a piece of craft paper to the cover. I then printed out an image and glued it on. I found this piece of hardware in my stash. It's missing the other half of it, so I glued a small piece of wood to it. I then glued it to the front of the book. I used rub and buff to cover the wood. Next, I attached a piece of stretchy cord to a painted washer and then glued that to the back of the book. To finish it, I tied on a few scrapbook charms to the ends of the cord. For the last project, I'm using this pattern and a piece of scrap fabric. I started by tracing the pattern onto the fabric and then sewing around the edges. I then cut around the sewn lines and clipped all the curves. Next, I turned it right side out and stuffed it. I then sewed the seam shut. Next, I gave the entire thing a coat of black paint. While the paint was still wet, I sprinkled it with cinnamon. I then sewed the mouse using coffee-dyed felt. I used black embroidery floss to make French knots for the eyes. To make the whiskers, I used cream-colored embroidery floss. For the tail, I'm using black wire because I'm out of rusty wire. I just used hot glue to attach it. The hat brim is black felt that I pulled slightly along the edges to give it a ruffled look. I brushed off the loose cinnamon and then glued on the button eyes. I used cream embroidery floss to make the nose and mouth. I also added a little antiquing wax to tone down the floss color. The whiskers are paper-covered wire glued into the face. Next, I glued on the hat brim and added some greenery sprigs and coffee-dyed cheesecloth strips. To make the banner, I printed it onto cardstock and used a deckled edge ruler to tear it. I then used ink around the edges and glued it into place. Next, I added some rusty safety pins and attached the paper-covered wire to it. This was where the rusty wire would have been good to use. To finish it, I attached the mouse to the star. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed these projects, and I'll see you in the next video.